Only mode.
Good morning, everyone. We're all anxiously waiting for the release of the new version of the SQF code, right? Well, this webinar will provide some basic information about some of the proposed changes to the code. My name is Rama, and I'm the Technical Program Director for Perry Johnson Registrars Food Safety Certification, Inc., which is a certification body located in Troy, Michigan. We certify food processing companies and farms to various GFSI benchmarked food safety standards. This is an informal communication actually, because SQF has not released the final version of the code, and that's why this is some kind of informal communication regarding the proposed changes to the current revision, which is 7.2. The Institute, SQF5, was waiting for the finalization of the GFSI requirement document. Previously this was called guidance document. Now they have changed the description to requirement document, GFSI requirement document. And it's likely that this document, that is the GFSI requirement document, will be issued in the final form by January 2017, mid-January or something like that. Because all scheme owners must align their standards, again I'm referring to food safety standards, because these things must align with the GFSI requirement document. SQF is planning to issue the new version or the new revision of the code sometime in January 2017 with a timetable of, with a timeline of 6 months from the issue date. Now the question is, why does the code get revised regularly? There are 2 reasons for that. Number 1, the code must get updated with the current changes and advancements in the field of food safety. The code must keep up with the current changes, the new developments, etc., etc. That's one of the reasons for revising the code or other food safety standards. Again, the other reason is it must align, the code must align with the GFSI guidance document. And as I just mentioned to you, it's not guidance document anymore. It's going to be called requirement document. GFSI is in the process of revising its benchmarking document. So therefore, the SQF code also must be revised to align with the GFSI requirement. So these are the 2 reasons for revising the code or other food safety standards. I'm sure you're familiar with Part A of the code. I'm just going to take you through some of the major changes in Part A. Part A of the code talks about implementing and maintaining the code. In fact, it provides information about administrative matters, administrative details actually, administrative details pertaining to the implementation and maintenance of the code. We all know SQF code is a vertically integrated code. So that means you can apply the code, apply the standard to all sectors of the food supply chain, right from primary production through food retailing and the manufacture of food packaging. So everything is covered under one umbrella. Now, Edition 8 is going to be available in separate documents depending on the sector. So this means you will have separate documents for each of the following. Number one, a separate food safety code for human food, animal feed, and pet food manufacturing, all under one document. Then you will have a separate code for the food safety fundamentals. Previously this was level 1. Then another one for primary production. They have removed the sectors pertaining to primary production, 1, 2, 3, and things like that. And these things are going to be in the form of a separate document, and that's called SQF Food Safety Code for primary production. Then another one for storage and distribution. And again, one for manufacturing of food packaging. A new one for retail sector, so the food safety code for retail code. More importantly, you will have a separate quality code. This has been separated from the food safety code. Okay, so these are separate documents that you will see in Edition 8 or Revision 8. In the next 2 slides, I have outlined the summary changes effected by the Institute for the individual modules. Okay. I'm going to take you through the individual codes or sectors. Now, number 1, this is going to be called production, capture, and harvesting of livestock and game animals. Previously, we had apiculture, that is raising of bees and things like that, under 1. So that has been removed from the food sector category number 1. Number 2, again, it's changed. Now it applies to the production, harvesting, storage of all sprouted seed crops without further processing. That is food sector category 2. Now number 3, they have added raw nuts, which was not there before. Similarly, nuts, processing of nuts, that is basic operations, cleaning and things like that, that has been added to food sector category 4. Number 5, which is extensively broad acre agriculture operations, they have added pulses to the description. Similarly, number 6, harvesting and intensive farming of seafood. Previously this was fish. Now they have generalized the description to seafood. And again, number 9, they have changed the description from fish to seafood. Number 10, which is dairy, reference to milk substitute and infant formula, they have been removed from the category. Okay, so this is a change that has been, this is a change that is going to be affected in food sector category 10. And as I just mentioned to you in the beginning, apiculture will be added to number 11. Previously this was honey processing. Now this includes apiculture also. Number 14, it's going to be fruit, vegetable, and nut processing. They have added fruit juices and processing of nuts to category 14. 15, again, there are some changes. Pasteurization of dairy, that has been removed, and it will go under 10 now because dairy is 10. Similarly, fruit juices will be put under 16, beverage processing and things like that. And 18, there is no major change. 19, again, no major changes. 20, there is some change here. They have included sandwiches, wraps, and high-risk desserts to food service sector, actually. Okay, so that is also included in number 20. So previously we had nuts here, that is number 22. Now it's going to be just processing of cereal grains, because they have removed nuts and then they have put under 14 basic operations and things like that. 23, no major change. 24 is retailing. Now this is not a high-risk operation, and this is going to be included in 23. Again, similarly, 25, produce storage and distribution is now combined with general warehousing and things like that. Similarly, 26 is going to be combined with 25. And 27, the only addition is food service items such as cutleries and things like that. They will be included in 27. And they're going to remove 28, 29, 30, and 35. These sectors or these categories are going to be removed from the individual food sector categories. So these are some major changes we have. And talking about the applicable modules, we all know number 2, which is the system element module. That's going to be applicable to all sectors. Whereas the GMP, the applicable GMPs will be module 10 for category 4, which is fresh produce and nuts backhouse. Number 9 is going to be applicable to slaughterhouse, boning, and butchery operations, as well as processing and processing of manufactured meats and poultry. Okay. Now for seafood, dairy, and things like that, it is going to be module 11, which we all know. And these are the individual documents we just talked about it. Separate, for instance, 27, separate document, separate food safety code, which also includes the applicable GMP under one document. That is the code, SQF Food Safety Code for manufacture of food packaging. Similarly, for retailing, you will have a separate document, SQF Food Safety Code for retailing, and things like that. Okay, now let me just take you through some of the major changes to the scope description. We all know the scope description, or the scope of certification, should be clearly identified and agreed upon between the site and the certification body, and the two prior to certification audit. So what does it include? What does the scope include? It includes the site, the processes, and the product. Okay, so basically the scope of certification shall include, number 1, the site. SQF certification, we all know, is site specific. The entire site, including the buildings, the silos, tanks, and loading, unloading bays, and the premises, etc., they all must be included in the scope of certification. But if a facility wants to exempt or seeks to exempt part of the premises, the request for exemption must be submitted to the certification body in writing prior to the certification audit, of course, with proper justification. So what I meant by justification was it should detail the reason for exemption, why they want to exempt a particular thing. That must be properly documented. And the certification body will review, the technical wing of the certification body will review that. and accept or reject or ask for more clarifications. Okay, and these exemptions must be listed in the site description in the database. Number one, this has to be properly documented in the SQF database, and also it must be included in the site description of the audit report. So, and what about products? Again, SQF certification is product specific. The food sector category or categories and products processed and handled on site shall be identified and agreed in the scope of certification. So that's a requirement. When a site seeks to exempt any products, the request for exemption, like in the previous case, must be submitted to the certification body in writing, and that too prior to the certification audit, explaining the reason for exemption. It's similar to what I just mentioned to you a few minutes ago. Okay. And exempted products must not be promoted as being certified or covered by the certification. And there are certain requirements for exemption, and you know that they must be produced in a different location, physically separate from the process lines that are included in the scope of certification, etc., etc. But sometimes companies get a few products exempted, but they are promoted as being covered by certification. That is a total no-no, because that goes against the requirements of the code. And the scope of certification, the scope of certification definitely forms part of the certificate, and it describes the location of the site, the food sector categories, and the products processed and handled on site. So these are actually documented on your certificate. I said in the beginning, Part A covers some of the administrative requirements. Again, this is one of those requirements. This is about audit duration. Okay. Once the certification body and the supplier, meaning site, I think the description supplier is also getting changed to site. Once the scope has been agreed, the number of the actual duration is calculated. It is a responsibility of the CB to calculate the audit duration. We all know it has two different stages. Stage one is about documentation. Stage two is the facility audit. And audit duration or audit time will vary according to the size of the facility, and also on the complexity of the operations. And there are a few factors that can impact on the audit duration, such as the size of the sites, the number and complexity of product lines, whether it's a high or low risk product, the complexity of the SQF system design itself, the level of mechanization, labor intensive. Now, there are so many things that influence or impact the audit duration. As a guide, actually, SQF requires justification from certification body when the audit duration deviates by 30%. When it goes 30% above the guidelines given, then the CV must provide proper justification to SQF. Right. Now, I said there are two stages, and they have added a bit of clarity to the expectations here. Let's talk about stage one, which is the document audit. It says business entities employing less than 10 people. This is what I'm talking about. Then the guideline is 0.5, a half day for document review. For those facilities, that have less than 10 people. All other manufacturing businesses, it is 1 day. So this is a guideline. And as I just mentioned, if the duration, the calculated duration exceeded by 30% of this guideline, then the CB must provide justification to the institute, SQF. Similarly, certain guidelines there. I'm not going to go through each and everything. So this is for stage 2. Okay. In fact, where a site is part of a larger corporation, this is about headquarter, head office audits, for example. Where the site is part of a larger corporation and some food safety functions are conducted at the corporate office or the head office. What SQF says is a corporate audit may need to be conducted by the certification body. And the decision on whether a separate audit is required, it must be made by the CB and communicated to the head office and the site managed by the corporate office. Okay. So this is the expectation. Rather, this is a new expectation from SQF. We all know the core has a number of mandatory elements. Okay, I'm not going to go through the mandatory elements one by one, but the expectation is that the mandatory elements must be reported in the audit report. Detailed observations must be recorded, must be documented in the audit report. Similarly, non-conformances identified during the audit must also be accurately described in the food safety audit report. Okay. You all know they have changed the template, and there is something called section summary. Actually, the section summary must be a detailed one, and when there is a non-conformity, that must be properly documented, full description of the non-conformity with objective evidence for non-conformity. And the auditor is supposed to leave a summary of the non-conformities with the site before the facility audit is closed. And what happens after that is the certification body will review and approve the audit report. And similarly, I think there are no changes to the timeline here. That must be sent to, rather that must be forwarded to the site within 10 days of the completion of the audit. And the final report, now corrective actions, there are some changes, you know that. Corrective actions, the corrective action plans must be forwarded to the auditor directly, and the auditor will accept or reject the corrective action plans and complete the final report, and the final report will also be within 45 days. Again, no changes to this requirement. The completed report will be forwarded to the client within 45 days, and that is the timeline for certification also. 15 days from the closure of minor nonconformities. That will be, a certificate also will have to be issued within 45 days from the conclusion of the audit. Remember, now there is a change. Previously we had 14 days for major and 30 days for minor. This is for closing the nonconformities. Now they have made it uniform, meaning 30 days throughout for major and minor nonconformities. So that's another change they have effected. Okay. Something about surveillance audit and seasonal operations. Surveillance audits applicable to seasonal operations, etc., etc. So what exactly is a seasonal operation? Seasonal operation is one where the major activities of a site are conducted over not more than 5 consecutive months in any calendar year. So that is the definition of a seasonal operation. Okay? And if a facility attained a C rating, and if that is the case, then the facility will be subjected to a surveillance audit, meaning 6-monthly frequency. Okay. Where the due date for surveillance audit falls within the operational season, the surveillance audit shall occur within 30 days on either side of the anniversary date, audit date. So that is a requirement. Where the due date of the surveillance audit falls outside the operational season, the certification body shall conduct a pre-operational audit. So they have clarified in Edition 8. The CB shall conduct a pre-operational audit no less than 30 days prior to the next season. So they have added a bit of clarity to the requirements here. Basically, this is applicable to seasonal operations. Again, the next slide, they have referred to section 4.4 of Part A, that is where there is a significant change in the seasonal operations, whereby the recertification audit, that is a 60-day window, cannot be met. The certification body shall temporarily reset the recertification audit date, etc., etc. So that is, again, I know it may not be quite applicable to many of you, but a few of our clients, they do have to meet this requirement. Now this is about compliance and integrity program. This is a new requirement. So in order to meet the requirements of the compliance and integrity program, even SQF may from time to time monitor the activities of the certification bodies and its auditors, or their auditors actually. Okay. This is to verify the effectiveness of the operations carried out by CB and also the auditors of the CB. And these things include the monitoring techniques. What SQF is going to do is they may conduct validation audits. They may also do witness audits. Validation audit is independent of the CB audit, meaning they can go to your facility directly and verify whether the audit done by the auditor was correct, okay, by employing its own auditors. Now that is validation audit. They would like to validate the effectiveness of the audit conducted by CBs. And also they may take part in witness audit. The difference is, I think, during a witness audit, when an auditor of a CB conducts the audit, the representative from SQF will also be present to watch how it is conducted. Okay, so in that case, the requirement states that site shall allow additional SQF authorized representatives or staff or auditors into their facility during the audit or after the audit has taken place. Again, which is not quite explicit in Edition 7.2. Now they are making it very specific. They are making it very clear that the site must allow the SQF representatives to do their job. Okay, so this is a new, this is a bit of clarification. Now let's move on to the some of the major changes to Module 2. Here I have referred to section 2.1.2. This is about the responsibilities of an SQFP, which is a SQF practitioner. We all know the SQF practitioner has 3 responsibilities. Now they have added one more to the list, and that is the practitioner must ensure the site personnel have the required competencies as per 2911. If you refer to 2911, it talks about providing training to ensure competency people involved in the food safety management system. Okay? So now it is a responsibility of the SQF practitioner to look into the competencies of people performing operations in a facility. Additionally, senior management has the responsibility to develop and implement a food safety communication plan. So what does it mean? It means the senior management has to come up with a plan, a communication plan, to ensure that everybody in the organization is informed, or the staff is informed of their food safety and regulatory responsibilities, and also to make them aware of their role in meeting the requirements of the code. Okay. And the same section, they have introduced a new subsection, which is 2.1.2.10. Senior site management shall designate defined blackout periods that prevent unannounced recertification audits from occurring out of season or when the site is not operating for legitimate business reasons. So this is a requirement. So this means the senior management is responsible for finalizing the blackout periods and communicate with the certification body at least a month before the 60-day recertification window. Okay. Again, this was not quite clear in the previous one. Unannounced audit has been going on for quite some time, but now they have made it very clear the senior management of the site is responsible for documenting the blackout periods and communicating with the CD. This is an interesting one, and this is about food safety manual. In fact, the requirements of section 2131 and 2132, I'm referring to the current section number. These are the current section numbers in 7.2. Now they have been moved to 2.2.1.1, which is the document control requirement. Okay. So the section number 2211 of edition 8 will document, rather it has the requirement for food safety manual, which is a summary of the organization's food safety policies and methods will have to be documented. The policy statement and the organization chart, the scope of certification, and a list of products covered under the scope of certification. And the requirements are not new, but the section number has been changed from 2231, 2232 to 2211. Okay. And similarly, 2132, which is the current revision, 7.2, and that has been changed to 2221, which talks about a food safety manual shall be documented, maintained, made available to relevant staff, and include or reference the written procedures, etc., etc. Again, that has also been moved to 2221 in edition 8. This is an interesting one because this talks about food safety plan itself. In fact, the food safety plan requirement is broken up into 17 different requirements to address the HACCP steps. I think it's just not there actually. Now this is a detailed requirement. They've got some 17 requirements clearly mentioned in the code. What are they? Number one, the food safety plan shall be developed and maintained by a multidisciplinary team that includes the practitioner and those site personnel with technical production and engineering knowledge of the relevant products and associated processes. Where the expertise is not available on site, you may obtain advice from other sources to assist the food safety team, basically hiring a consultant. Okay, so they have made it explicit in the new code, in the new revision actually. Now, the second one is the scope of each food safety plan shall be documented. This talks about the scope. You must document the scope of the food safety plan. This plan is applicable to so-and-so products. And that's the scope, right? So that kind of clear documentation is required as per Edition 8. Again, some clear requirements for product description. Product description shall be developed and documented for all products included in the scope of the food safety plan. This shall include information in the finished product spec. Obviously, you'll have finished product spec. You have to get some information from the finished product spec, plus additional information related to product safety, such as pH, water activity, composition, etc., etc. So you must have detailed product description. And again, intended use of each product, again, detailed requirement. Okay, so what things should be included in the intended use, such as target groups, consumer groups, potential for consumption by vulnerable group of population, etc., etc., potential alternative use of the product. And you must specify all these things in the intended use. And obviously, if there are risks associated with these things, you should address them in your HACCP plan, hazard analysis, and come up with mitigation plans. Again, some explicit requirement related to flow diagram. The food safety team shall develop and document a flow diagram covering the scope of each food safety plan. Okay, and the flow diagram should include or shall include ABC. What are those things? Such as process, raw material, packaging material, service inputs, process delays, and things like that. Again, detailed requirement with regard to flow diagram. And the next requirement is hazard analysis. The food safety team shall identify and document all food safety hazards that can reasonably be expected to occur at each step in the process, including raw materials and other inputs. And I can tell you, based on my own experience, raw material hazard analysis, that normally that is not quite comprehensive. Now they want you to document clearly the hazards associated with your inputs, raw materials, packaging materials, etc., etc. And once you have identified the hazards, then you must come up with control measures to all those significant hazards. And sometimes more than one control measure may be required to control the identified hazard. If that is the case, then document all those control measures. And then you will come up with CCPs. Again, this is something new, but they are making it very explicit here. So document CCPs, document the CCP limits, and procedures to monitor CCPs to ensure the CCPs are within the established limits and things like that. And when there are deviations, how are you going to dispose the affected product? Document the procedure, deviation procedures, Again, this is a clear requirement from the new revision or new edition of the code. Okay, and another requirement is a document and an approved food safety plan shall be implemented in full. The effective implementation shall be monitored by the food safety team, and a full review of the documented and implemented plan shall be conducted at least annually. Again, this is not a new requirement. This was included in your 12 steps of Codex, but I think they are making it very clear this is not the case in 7.2. And one new requirement is where local food safety regulations prescribe a food safety control methodology other than the Codex Alimentarius Commission, that is the Codex Alimentarius Commission HACCP guidelines, the food safety team shall implement food safety plans that meet both Codex and food regulatory requirements. An example of that is FSMA. FSMA is different from Codex, slightly different from Codex. So if that is the case, they are making it very clear that you are responsible, your food safety team is responsible for implementing the food safety plan as required by your regulation. So this is, I think this is definitely a major change. So let's move on to the next one. Again, this is an interesting one in the sense, previously this was 2.4.5, incoming goods and services. Now the title of that has been changed to approved supplier program. It's not only that, they have made it mandatory. Now the new section number is 244. Previously this was 245, and now this is 244, which is approved supplier program. So what does it tell you? All raw materials, ingredients, and packaging materials received from other facilities under the same corporate ownership shall be subjected to the same specification requirements. Again, they are referring to section number 2.3.2 and approved supplier requirements as all other material providers. I think it is very clear to you in the sense, if you have more than 2 or 3 entities, 2 or 3 sites under the same corporate ownership, previously from one entity, one site, they were shifting the raw materials and packaging materials to another facility for manufacture. But if that is the case, or even part of the production, if that is the case, the new code requirement is that the facility that is transferring these materials should be treated as, or shall be treated as an approved supplier. And whatever requirements you have for approved supplier program, they must be applied to that particular facility. So that's an interesting one. And again, the new section number 2.4.4.7, this stipulates the requirements for supplier audit. That states supplier audits shall be based on risk and shall be conducted by individuals knowledgeable about the applicable regulatory and food safety requirements. And accordingly, the auditors be trained in auditing techniques. So this is very clear in the sense, if you are making use of an auditor for doing some supplier audit, he or she must be suitably qualified. And again, the supplier audits must be based on risk. So this is a new requirement. As many of you know, this is not a new requirement. This was in Module 11, but now that has been shifted to Module 2, which is environmental monitoring. This has been pulled from Module 11. But this has, in the new revision of the new code, new version, it has become almost mandatory for all sectors. which states an environmental monitoring program shall be in place for all manufacturing processes. You may not say, my process is low risk. No, you are still required to have an environmental monitoring program. Okay? And there you have to define the responsibility and methods for the program. It must be documented and implemented. And sampling scheme and testing schedule, all these things shall be documented and implemented, and you are required to have the records maintained, appropriate records maintained. So these are some additional requirements, but previously I think the code just mentioned something about environmental monitoring, but it has been clearly spelled out in the new revision actually. One interesting thing is this refers to section 251, and that has been deleted actually. Okay, but the other requirements have not been deleted. This is system verification, validation. Validation and verification activities shall be conducted. They have, in fact, made it very clear. They have added clarity to this particular section. The frequency and methods used to validate and verify food safety fundamentals, critical limits, and other food safety controls shall be identified in your food safety plan, properly documented and implemented. Okay, and records of all verification activities shall be maintained. I don't think these requirements are new, but they have just added some clarity to it, which is not there in the previous one. This is a new requirement, that is product changeover. Product changeover procedures during packing, because many of the food safety incidents, I'm referring to allergen related recalls, etc., they were because of, they originated from this issue actually. So product changeover procedures during packing shall be documented and implemented to ensure that the correct product is in the correct package and the changeover is inspected and approved by an authorized person. And this is 2613. Okay. Interestingly, they have added some new requirements to food fraud, which is in 272. Which goes like this: the methods, responsibility, and criteria for identifying suppliers' vulnerability to food fraud shall be documented, implemented, and maintained. Okay. The assessment shall include the supplier's susceptibility to ingredient or other product substitution, mislabeling, etc., etc. So they want you to focus on vulnerability assessment related to your raw materials and things like that. Once you have identified them, then you have to have the mitigation plan. So that is also required. And like any other plan, the assessment shall be reviewed and verified annually, okay, and keep records of all those assessments. So this section is totally new, food fraud. The essence of that is you must document a vulnerability plan. You must review it annually, and you have to keep your records. Okay, so this is a new requirement. Let's move on to Allergen now. Allergen is allergen requirements are documented in 282, okay, which is a mandatory requirement, and it's broken up into multiple sections actually. Now, I think we are really running short of time. I'll quickly take you through some of the new requirements as far as allergen control is concerned. The new number is 2825. This is a new subsection that states, based on risk assessment, procedures for validation and verification of the effectiveness of the cleaning and sanitation of areas and equipment in which allergens are used shall be effectively implemented. Okay. Again, very clear requirement related to validating and verifying your cleaning procedures related to allergen cleaning. Another new requirement that is documented in 2826 is where allergenic material may be present, product changeover procedures. Again, this talks about product changeovers. In the previous slide, in one of the previous slides, we talked about product changeovers. It is very specific to allergen. When there is product changeover, please document and implement to eliminate the risk of cross-contact. Okay. Again, there is one more in the same section, that is allergen control, which is 2827, which states the product identification system shall make provision for clear identification and labeling in accordance with the regulatory requirements of those products produced on production lines and equipment on which food containing allergens were manufactured. Okay. So these are some major changes to the allergen management procedures. Now let's see some changes. I won't say these are major changes, but these are minor changes to Module 11. Module 11 has got an introductory note now, which was not there previously. It states all applicable elements of Module 11 shall be implemented. So that means all the requirements are applicable as long as you don't request for exemption. And like in Part A, I was talking about exclusions and exemptions. Now, when you want to have something exempted, that must be properly justified and submitted to the certification body in writing before the audit. So if you want to make, or rather if you want to request any exemption for Module 11, that must be done prior to the audit. Put it in writing, send it to the CB, get it approved, and keep it with you. Otherwise, the assumption or the presumption is that all requirements of Module 11 will be applicable. Okay. This particular requirement, pipes carrying sanitary waste or wastewater located directly over product lines or storage areas shall have catch pans. So this is, I don't think it is totally new, but they want you to have catch pans. When you have a situation like this, you should have catch pans under pipe connectors and things like that to prevent contamination of food, materials, etc., etc. Similarly, on the next slide, which is 11262, 11282, 11262 is about product testing for microbiological or chemical, actually. Shall be conducted separate from product handling areas. Again, we had it in 7.2, but now they are making it very explicit. Where you have product testing, where you conduct product testing for micro and chemical reasons, they must be separate from product handling areas. Okay. Again, 11282 is about cleaning your ventilation equipment. Again, this was known in the previous one also, but they have made it very explicit that all ventilation equipment and devices shall be adequately cleaned. Okay. This is an interesting one, which is the new section number is 11291. Specifications for equipment, utensils, and protective clothing. You must have procedures, and these procedures must be documented. So that means they are looking for specifications for equipment and even utensils. Okay. Some minor change, which is 11213.7, that talks about detergents and sanitizers. There's a mixed detergent sanitizers. may be mixed according to manufacturer's instructions, stored in containers that are suitable for use and clearly identified. Okay. So that's a new requirement. And on this slide we have two additional requirements. This relates to water. Where water is stored on site, storage facilities shall be adequately designed, constructed, and maintained to prevent contamination. If you have a water storage tank, then the requirements have been clearly spelled out here. Okay. Similarly, 11524, which is the again a new requirement, water used as an ingredient in processing or in cleaning and sanitizing equipment shall be treated to maintain portability. Okay, so they expect you to treat water where water is used as an ingredient. You have to make sure that it is portable, and that means you have to treat water. Okay. This comes from the preventive control rules for human food, section 117.95 of the new regulation, which is inedible waste designated for animal feed shall be stored and handled so as to not cause a risk to the animal or further processing for human consumption. If you are supplying your line rejects, I'm not talking about floor rejects, I'm talking about line rejects and seconds and things like that. If you are selling them as animal feed, you must make sure that these are stored and handled appropriately to prevent contamination. So these are some major changes that have been effected in 7.2, and obviously I think this is an informal communication, and but still I think they're trying to finalize the things. Probably by mid-January the code will be, the new revision will be finalized and it will be issued sometime in January. That is the expectation. Mid-January 2017, and 6 months from now, 6 months from that time, you have time for implementation. So that is the expectation. I hope this was useful to you, and if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to raise your questions. Thank you very much. I didn't see any questions actually. So if that is the case, thank you very much for your time.